I invite you all to close your eyes and look inward. We come together today to join in the fellowship and sacred space that church provides. For many of us, this time together is an answer to a hunger that reaches our very core. As we settle our minds on the yearnings of our heart, we may feel a pain that there are questions that go unanswered. And we feel that pain together. But the answer that we can provide as a community is the warmth of friendship and family. The knowledge that in all things we yearn for, even if they are not attainable, we are never alone in the journey. And perhaps the deepest yearning that touches us all is the yearning for companionship and understanding. Let us affirm today that we do not need to strive for perfection, because the gloriously imperfect people that we are is far superior. The imperfection that leaves us questioning may be the answer that blesses another. So let us yearn to take pride in our idiosyncrasies. And let us take pride in the idiosyncrasies of our family and friends. Because when we take pride in the beauty of ourselves and those around us, we find the heart of community. May we hear and feel the dreams of heart and mind that touch us all. And may we come together to share in each other's hopes, dreams, and yearnings. Let us be silent to carry these yearnings in our heart. Did you notice how early Passover and Easter were this year? It feels a little odd to be opening our celebration of April with both holidays behind us. But honestly, I think as we close the door on inquiry and open to some of the answers that are in our hearts, it frees us to stand on our own two Unitarian Universalist feet. But I do think that there's something special about this time of year. I feel a pulse of life-affirming revelation because the holidays are coupled with the changing of the season. Maybe it has its own season, a season of revelation, perhaps. We all probably know narratives of Passover and Easter, the former about a whole people subjugated as slaves who escape their plight through miracles and plagues. The latter about a beloved leader and teacher who dies in pain but resurrects 2 days later to bring life anew. In many ways, we take bits and pieces from these holidays to make it our own. And maybe some of us went to a Passover Seder. I did. And last week, we shared the joy of freedom and metaphoric revival. This year, we got to combine that with the more literal revival of the spring equinox. And maybe we disregard some of the pieces that trouble us. But in the last month, we gave our love to our pagan, Jewish, and Christian heritage. Traditions with so many beautiful celebrations of revelation. Revelation handed down, sought after, examined and re-examined every year. But I think that I end up hungering for a narrative and a method that is all our own. One that expresses a distinctly you celebration of the season. Because as much as I adore Passover and Easter, and even though they are a tremendously important part of my personal heritage, they aren't a function of our collective identity. And when we celebrate Passover and Easter in our own Unitarian Universalist way, somehow it still sort of feels like we are visitors among beloved friends. The rituals are beautiful and meaningful, but not entirely ours. It's something that we do all the time. We cobble bits and pieces together to put a spin on a traditional holiday and make it Unitarian Universalist. And don't get me wrong, I love this. I really enjoy it. But where does it say that we have to stick with only the holidays of our ancestors? Maybe we can look at the common themes that make this season unique, and from there make something that is all ours. Create our own holiday. I do think we can take inspiration from Passover, Easter, and spring, though, because they do show us a theme that makes this season unique. Redemption. For Passover, once enslaved in turmoil, now free from oppressive hands. And the Passover Seder ritualizes that redemption. For Easter, the pain of Jesus' death is redeemed when he is resurrected. And every year, Christians celebrate their own redemption through the ritual of remembering Jesus's. Earlier, I spoke about the role that Elijah plays in Seders, and most of us know the role that Moses plays in the narrative. And I have to admit that there's something enticing about honoring a prophet of redemption in a narrative and in a ritual. But who would be our prophet of redemption? And what would be our narrative? As an individual who's half Christian and half Jewish, I feel a very special connection to both of the holidays. But as a Unitarian Universalist, I feel like something is missing. I think that's why these holidays can sometimes fall short for us, because we're still looking for our own narrative and ritual, our own story of revelation and redemption. It's tricky. How do we define redemption? What does you redemption look like? I don't think it's just an intangible concept of otherworldly salvation like it is for Easter, or a clear-cut reward in this life like Passover. I think our redemption is celebrating a narrative where we made a serious mistake, but learned something crucial in the process. Because we can carry that mistake with us as a doubt that drives our faith. Now, in any narrative, even if it is all our own, redemption still has to speak to a time when we felt a disconnecting pain. And it's really hard to ask us to find our own story of pain. In a way, it's more work for us. But what makes redemption so important is that out of that pain comes something new and life-affirming. Something that could only be learned through that initial pain. And I think this model can be applied to both personal and historical settings, because we can find redemptive stories and prophets who helped us get there, both in the history of Unitarian Universalism and in our own lives. But today, I'm going to tell you the historical narrative that has been in my heart this season. Theodore Parker was a Unitarian minister living in the 19th century, and at that time, the Unitarian Church very much considered themselves a Christian tradition. Parker was a vehement abolitionist, and he had a really strong voice of moral conviction. But in 1841, he gave a sermon that ended up changing his relationship with the Unitarian Church for the rest of his life. He was 30, still a budding minister, really, but I think that he was sort of seen as a prodigy in a way. So he was asked to preach at an ordination ceremony for a colleague. And he was happy to do it. I think that he viewed ministry as, in the Unitarian Church, as a vehicle for people to prod our assumptions, and so he welcomed his colleague into a probing tradition with a sermon about the transient nature of Christianity. I'll try to paraphrase it with apologies to Reverend Parker's memory, and a shameless plug that you should all try to read the sermon sometime. But today I'm going to try to sum it up in 2 or 3 sentences. The gist was that people spend so much time on complicated theological questions that we've completely forgotten the substance of what Jesus said. There's no way to find certainty to the questions of Jesus' relationship to God or how to put a faith in that into practice. The theology and debate about Jesus' status would always change with the times because it was viewed from the lens of society. But Jesus' words and deeds of compassion were the essence of religion and truth, because the theology and interpretation of Christianity will always change, but the words that Jesus spoke are eternal. And his words were about radical love, that bringing love into your heart is an act of redemption. That was the essence of his sermon. It might not sound so out there to us, but truth be told, Parker had no idea how controversial this really was back then. He became a Unitarian minister because he believed in the freedom of thought that it encouraged. And instead of eager minds ready to hear his words with an open mind and an open heart, he was met with fury. And 2 years later, he was kicked out of official fellowship with the Unitarian Church. I imagine it was not lost on him that this action proved him right in a way, because he was not heard with compassion. He always considered himself a Unitarian, though, and he devoted most of his life to opposing slavery and trying to live the words that Jesus spoke. I wish that I could say that the Unitarian Church followed Parker's example on combating slavery. But we were not among the traditions that really led the way in the abolition movement, though certainly there were individuals. And I wish I could say that there was a happy ending in this story for Parker. But he was never welcomed back into the fold. And even when he was dying in 1859, the prominent Boston Unitarians refused to offer an olive branch. And so the story of Parker shines a glaring light on what to me really feels like a devastating hypocrisy. And a time when I feel like our tradition was very much in a state of disconnectedness. A rare time when I would consider myself embarrassed of our actions. Because our story with Parker is emblematic of a time when we stayed silent amidst very serious pain. And our silence stifled the tangible freedom of humans in slavery and the intangible freedom of religious belief. I find myself seeking redemption for this painful story, which is sadly a very real part of our history. But even though Parker is gone, his narrative lives on. It lives in us. And we can offer this story the redemption that it longs for. Because in this narrative, we find a method of revelation. How to receive knowledge bestowed unto us, whether it is from a neighbor, a minister, a devout conservative, or even yourself. And that method is to receive all knowledge with love-inspired doubt. Parker is the prophet in this story, and he teaches us that when we doubt with love and question with reverence, we participate in a most holy ritual of mind and spirit. And it's a ritual that we are free to create for ourselves, to be internalized or externalized, kept in our hearts or shared with our loved ones. What binds us together in knowledge and in revelation is to doubt with compassion and question with empathy, because it's a method that all of us can use. And it's a method that will never ask us to stop believing what we feel in our hearts, only that we open ourselves to the hearts that are all around us. Because when we have the strength to doubt our own beliefs and find that doubt beautiful, then we truly are people of faith. 120 years after Parker gave his sermon that would strip him of his Unitarian ordination, the Unitarian Universalist Association was born. And in this birth of a new tradition came the redemption of our tradition in ages past. With 6 sources of revelation, freedom of religious belief became the answer to disconnection. That love-inspired doubt guided our tradition to make it what it is today. And I can't help but see Theodore Parker as the person who embodies our 7 principles. But I can also appreciate that the context that Parker lived in might be a little foreign to us. So I'd like you to imagine a situation that might fill us with a similar sense of outrage that Parker's colleagues felt. Forgetting for a moment that Easter was last week and that this is not my personal theology, what would you do or say if I had come here today and preached a conventional Christian message about Easter? That the literal resurrection is our eternal salvation and faith in that event is our path. It would probably make a number of us feel a little bit uncomfortable. But I would like to think that you wouldn't report me to the ordination committee and instead doubt my conclusions with love in your heart. And I hope that you would come to me and tell me that something felt off about those conclusions for you. But you understand that for me, it may be a source of beauty and truth, a knowledge that guides my path. I imagine Parker would hope for that response as well. The miracle here is that we can make our own redemption. It all depends on where that compassionate doubting takes you. Parker's story is the narrative that I have chosen to teach me in this season of revelation. And I believe that to find a story in our lives that helps us doubt with love and is the deepest kind of revelation that we can seek. And it helps us celebrate our own personal redemption as Unitarian Universalists. The redemption of lessons learned. Our own Theodore Parker's. My charge to you is to think of a narrative, historic or personal, that embodies your relationship with revelation and redemption. And if you can, create a ritual that matches your narrative. Because out of these rituals, we can create a holiday of our very own. A holiday that helps us find out and remember year after year that redemption is always possible, even if it takes 172 years. I personally yearn for a ritual that embodies the redemption we seek on behalf of the Unitarian history and the wrong that it did to Theodore Parker. So please join me in a ritual of my own creation, and feel free to participate in as little or as much as you feel comfortable with. Don't worry, I promise it's brief. Let us close our eyes for just a moment. Theodore Parker, may I take your words and deeds to heart. May I honor your life and redeem a mistake in our history by welcoming everyone of every faith to my table and to the pulpit. So today, friends, I would like to invite our congregation to metaphorically reordain Reverend Theodore Parker as a ritual to celebrate our historical redemption. I invite you, if you feel comfortable, to join me in saying a few words, and you will find an insert in your order of service that have these words written down. Theodore Parker, in the spirit of freedom and love, we invite you into fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. We gain strength from your wisdom and compassion from your life of perseverance. We hereby ordain you in recognition that you lived a life of compassionate doubt and radical love and freedom. May the ministry of your life inspire us all. Today, we will honor Reverend Parker and his prophetic teaching that freedom of religious belief, guided by love, would be the future of the Unitarian Church. None was more sacred to Parker than the freedom of belief within ministry. And so, holding his spirit in our hearts, today, let each and every one of us be ministers of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua. If you feel comfortable, I invite you to come up and take one of these tattoos or stickers to signify your ordination today. And you may choose between a simple chalice or one that says, Uni, Uni, for hope, healing, and the occasional heresy. I like that one. And these are blanks, where you are free to write a symbol that is meaningful for you as ministers of this church. So I invite you now, I will call one section at a time, to come and take one of these. I'm sorry, I don't have enough for everyone to take their first choice, but you should at least be able to get something. And in silence, we will go through this together, and once we have all collected one of these items and sat back down, I will finish the ritual. This day, we are all ministers of Unitarian Universalist redemption. Today, we join Reverend Parker as prophets of wisdom, prophets of love, and prophets who preach the freedom of body, mind, and spirit. Today, may we become ministers of our own redemption. Amen.
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.